Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Sunday. I hope the weekend is going well wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world. And you have a nice chilled Sunday, and I'm sure you'll be pretty happy with the result yesterday at Molineux. Pretty sure you're not going to be happy with some certain aspects of it that we're going to talk about in today's show, but take all the controversy out of it. Take Michael Oliver out of it. Take PGMOL out of it. It was 3 lovely points for Arsenal, and they absolutely deserved them given the circumstances. It was a really big win. You could see it at the end, what it meant to the players, given what they had to go through during the game. You could see what it meant to the away fans there and Mikel Arteta, the coaching staff. It was a huge, huge win for Arsenal. So we can't forget that. Now, obviously, I'm going to talk a lot in today's show about exactly what happened on the pitch yesterday in terms of the refereeing decision, in terms of Michael Oliver sending off Myles Lewis-Skelly, in terms of VAR not somehow getting involved in that, because it's a huge talking point that everyone is talking about right now. And I did go over it in my sort of immediate post-match reaction show yesterday from the press box at Molineux, but I want to talk about it more in depth, look at what people have been saying about it, and try and work out how that decision happened and how it was allowed to happen, because it's so baffling. But before I do that, I just want to talk about the win, because I think that's a really important thing to say and not get lost in this whole controversy over what happened with Michael Oliver and sending off in the red card. Just to talk about this win for Arsenal, because I think they deserve an awful lot of credit for it, because it was a huge win given what they had to go through. And that's where, again, it's hard not to sort of tie it into the red card, because it's such a massive part of the game. And I think what Arsenal did after the red card was so impressive, because we've seen at times this season, say the Bournemouth game, for example, when Saliba got sent off in the first half, Arsenal kind of went into their shell a little bit after that. We saw Mikel react, and he took off Sterling, didn't he? Brought on another defender, and Arsenal kind of went into their shell a bit. There was no real attacking intent in that game, and Bournemouth ended up winning it in the second half with those 2 goals. We saw it against Manchester City, obviously, with the Leandro Trossard red card. Arsenal went really into a low block and tried to protect their lead, which was understandable given who they were playing and where they were playing, but that's what they did. It was completely opposite this time, what Arsenal did. The red card seemed to sort of fire them up completely. I thought Arteta made a really good decision at half-time when he brought off Nwaneri. It wasn't one of the attackers. It was one of the midfield players that he brought off, and to put Calafiori in at left back. So Arsenal it wasn't like they lost that attacking intent. And I thought that sort of sent out the right message that, yes, we're down 10 men, but we're still going to attack you. We're still going to look like we can win this game. And the way they started that second half, there was a real intensity to them. They got the momentum very early, and they kept it throughout the second half. And when you consider what this Arsenal team have gone through in the last few weeks, the sheer amount of minutes that they've had to play, to do that with 10 men, again, with, a really stretched squad, with Odegaard out, with Marino out, with nothing on the bench to change, to do what they did in that last 45 minutes, I think deserves so much credit. It was a brilliant goal from Calafiori, which was, it was so important that he came on and delivered that goal, because 0-0, it would have been understandable given how the game went, but it would have been such a frustrating result. So to come up, to pop up with a goal like that, the way he scored it, we've seen him score a beautiful goal at the Etihad earlier on the season. To finish like that, it was so important for the team. And those celebrations at the end, they really meant something. You could tell, everyone was together. Now, who knows? This might be the sort of incident and second half that ends up sort of sparking Arsenal during the second half of this season, because those scenes at the end of the full-time whistle with the players, the coaching staff, the fans, it was just a really big win. And sometimes it can do that when you win with 10 men, when you sort of have that backs to the wall type mentality. It can really push you on. And I thought Arsenal were excellent in that second half. There was a real intensity and intent around them in how they played. And I'm not sure Wolves would have been expecting that at half-time. I think they caught them off guard, and they absolutely got what they deserve. So I just wanted to, before we get into what we're going to get into now, I just wanted to praise Arsenal for the way they played and the way they just put their bodies on the line, ran themselves into the ground. I mean, Kai Havertz literally couldn't walk at the end of that game yesterday. I didn't think Havertz had his best game, but what you cannot question was his sheer work ethic up front. I mean, I think he's played 3 90 minutes games in the last 10 days on top of the 120 minutes against Manchester United. I mean, it is just, the workload is too much. The club isn't helping him. They should have brought in reinforcements by now. We're towards the end of the window, and so he's having to play constantly given the situation Arsenal are in at the moment, and he is running himself into the ground, and everyone did that yesterday. And yeah, I just wanted to pay credit to them for that before getting into, what we're going to get into in a split second. But this is what Mikel had to say about the win itself. Said, yes, I'm extremely proud of the players. You can talk about our courage, you can talk about the spirit, but as well about intelligence, the way they managed emotionally the game. It was unbelievable, especially with what we had to face and how they felt about it. All of them just faced the situation, the challenge. We went into the second half. The only message was to go out there and help to win the game. That's it. Somebody doesn't feel it, don't go. And they certainly did it in a very convincing way to themselves to win the game. He's right to talk about how they sort of emotionally managed that game, because we'd all lost our heads completely. I'd lost my head in the press box. I could see everyone else around, every Arsenal fan around the world had completely lost their heads about what happened in that first half with the Lewis-Skelly decision. And the players could have easily done that, but they didn't. They kept their heads. They used it to fuel them. And I thought they were very, very intelligent with 10 men in how they played that game in the second half. On the importance of being able to grind out results like that, something we haven't really seen. Arsenal drop points when they've gone down to 10 men so far this season. This was the first time they actually went on and won a game. He said that's what they show us every single day. And this season has been very special for many circumstances. A lot of them very challenging today. We had 2 out again. We had Mikel out. We had Martin out. Still, we come here. We have to face a very difficult opponent that is fighting relegation. We have another issue during the match. Still, we go about it. So that's what I love about them. And I think that's why our supporters celebrated the way they're behind them, because they can feel that. And he's right to point all that out. And I think, I just thought it was a really impressive thing that Arsenal did yesterday. So just wanted to get that out of the way at the start of the show. Okay. Michael Oliver's decision to send off Myles Lewis-Skelly. I've had some time to sort of think about it. I was driving home from the game yesterday. I was thinking about it. I was listening to what they were saying on the radio. I got home. I watched Match of the Day. Where I was watching it in the press box, there wasn't really any cameras and replays around. And in real time, I thought, is he sending him off there for bringing him down? Denying a goal scoring opportunity? Surely not. He's 90 yards from goal. That can't be the case. So I presumed it must be something to do with the foul, with the tackle itself. When I finally saw the replays at half time, it's just like, this is laughable. I mean, how can this decision possibly come about? How can he make that decision? And the more you think about it, the more you watch it, the worse it gets. It's just an absolutely disgraceful decision from supposedly the best referee in the country, or certainly, I think the top 2 referees in the country are certainly considered, not so much by fans who watch the product every single week, but certainly by FIFA and UEFA and everyone. It would be Michael Oliver and Anthony Taylor. And yet, how can he watch that in real time? And I know the game is super quick, but he was right there. How can you watch that and give that as a red card? In what have you seen there to give that as a red card? And then to make matters worse, for VAR to sit there, watch it on multiple angles and say, yeah, you're right, that's a red card. Check over. I mean, how can that possibly happen? I honestly don't. I don't see how Michael Oliver can referee an Arsenal game again. I don't know how. I mean, there was very little trust when it comes to Michael Oliver and Arsenal in the first place, because of the bizarre decisions he's made in the past and how many players he sends off whenever he referees an Arsenal game. But after this, I just don't see how there can be any sort of trust there that he is not going to do something like this again. Now, this has to get overturned. Obviously, Arsenal will appeal. We'll look at what Mikel said in a minute, but obviously Arsenal will appeal, because it has to be overturned. It cannot be allowed to stand that Myles Lewis-Skelly would lose 3 games. So it's bad enough that his decision has made Arsenal have to play with 10 men for so long, again, with so many players out, those extra minutes and those extra yards that his decision has put into those legs. As I said, Kai Havertz couldn't walk at the end of the game. I don't know if he's injured. I really hope he's not, and it's something that he can run off. But, there's every possibility, looking at Kai Havertz at the end of that game, that he's done some sort of muscle damage to something. And that could well be down to the extra minutes and extra yards that Michael Oliver has forced him to play by this decision. And that is just not acceptable. And it was just an absolute car crash of a decision. It really, really was. I was looking at what some of the pundits have had to say. I'm just going to go through a few of these in terms of what the pundits said about the decision. Mark Chapman, obviously Match of the Day host, said that is one of the most baffling red cards I've ever seen, and supposedly from our best referee. I know they will spin the rules whichever way they want to make them protect themselves, but the most baffling red card I've seen. Ian Wright said, can I just say it's a joke? Anyone who has played the game ever, and I'm not talking about Premier League, I'm talking about 5-a-side Sunday League, knows that is never a red. Yellow card. Nobody says a word. Time and time again, this level of refereeing, the decisions in the Premier League, the inconsistency, excuses, apologies, all of it the referees just want to be the centre of attention for me. Pat Nevin said a bar so low, even a limbo dancing snake couldn't get under it. Gary Lineker said, I don't think they should need to appeal it. It was an incredibly poor decision. We all thought straight away yellow card. Alan Shearer, one of the worst decisions I've seen in a long time. I just cannot see and work out what VAR is thinking going along with Michael Oliver's decision. No wonder it gets criticised by so many people. And Shearer's right there, by the way, talking about the VAR. It's just cowardly. There is no way a professional referee can sit in that room watching replay after replay and not see that is a yellow card. And it's just cowardly. They're just protecting their mate. They're just thinking, and maybe it's because they're looking, it's Michael Oliver. He's one of the big dogs in PGMOL. I don't want to criticize him. I don't want to tell him he's made a mistake. So I just think it was cowardly from them. Absolutely. This is what Mikel had to say after the game on Lewis-Skelly's red card. He said, I think it's that obvious that we don't need any comments today. Hopefully the right thing will happen. On whether he had an explanation for sending it off, he said no. On if the club will appeal the red card, he said, hopefully we don't need to. And if we have to, it's happened. And it's really good precedent for what happened with Bruno Fernandes as well this season. That was that red card he had against Tottenham that Mikel's talking about. He said, okay, we're in a position that we shouldn't be in, but at least be in a position we should be for the next few weeks and allow our players to continue to show up. And by that, he means you can't allow Lewis-Skelly to miss the next 3 games because he will. If this isn't overturned, Lewis-Skelly now misses Arsenal's next 3 games. It just can't be allowed to happen because obviously you're making sure that Arsenal are without a really important player for the next 3 games, but also then you're making the players that are left have to play extra minutes because there's no way, you can't replace them. You can't rotate because you're missing a player that you absolutely should not be missing. There's just so much wrong with this decision. And I've always said, and I know you lot always hammer me for it, that I always say, look, I don't believe there is this corruption rife in PGMOL where everyone's getting paid money to make decisions against Arsenal and all of that. I still in my head, I don't believe it, or I don't want to believe that is the case. And obviously there's no evidence of that has been found, but it's very hard to watch what Michael Oliver does so consistently when he referees Arsenal and the decisions that he makes and the red cards that he issues, not to think there's at least some sort of bias in his head where he just absolutely dislikes Arsenal to make him make these decisions. And, you go back to Mikel Arteta's comments after the Newcastle game last season when he just hung PGMOL out to dry with those decisions, lambasted them for what their level of officiating. And then he went and won his case when Arsenal lawyered up and went and won the case against it and made sure that he didn't have a ban for what he had to say. And you look back to those comments and just think, is there some sort of bias throughout the organization now because of what Arteta did that they're like, nah, we're not having this? I don't know, but it's very hard not to look at what Oliver is doing and always seems to do when he takes charge of Arsenal games and not think that there is some sort of bias going through his head that makes him come to these conclusions, because he didn't even give himself a second to think about it yesterday. It was just red card from that instant when no one else in the ground, not even the Wolves players, no one else in the ground was expecting him to show a red card in that instant. It was just yellow card all day long that we see. And yet somehow he brandished red with us straight away without even giving time to think about this decision. It's just the whole thing needs looking at and working out how it can be improved. And it just can't be allowed to continue going the way it's going because it's just affecting everyone. And being a referee is a really difficult job. And you don't want to overly criticize because we need referees. Football needs referees, but they need them to officiate at the standard that they are officiating at. And the Premier League is the pinnacle of the sport at the moment in club football. And the referees are not up to the level that the product and the footballers and what we see each week, they're not up to the level that they are at. And that needs to be sorted out somehow. And it needs to be sorted out quickly because it is really affecting the game in this country and how people are viewing the game in this country. Okay, calm down a bit, rant over a bit. I'll go through what some of you guys have been saying in a minute about the game and about the incident as well. So here are my player ratings. Now, I've changed these a little bit from yesterday because I was driving home and I was thinking, yeah, I've been a little bit harsh on some of these players. So I've bumped a few up from what I originally gave them because the work they all put in, especially in that second half after the red card, deserved deserved more, I thought. So yeah, I had bumped some of these players up. So I gave Raya a 7. Absolutely. I mean, I could have given Raya an 8, to be honest, because when he was called upon, he stood up and he made the big save. So I could easily have given Raya an 8 for this game because he did everything you want from your goalkeeper. But I gave him a 7. I gave Timber a 7. Originally, I gave him a 6. And then I was thinking driving back, I was like, you know what? He got an absolute kick in yesterday, Timber. He got some really nasty challenges, real rough treatment from Wolves. He didn't stop. It was just constantly going. So I gave him a 7. I gave Saliba an 8. I thought Saliba was fantastic. I really did. Straight back in the side and you deliver a performance like that. Just ate up everything that Wolves sent his way. It was just a really imperious performance from Saliba. So I gave him an 8. I gave Gabriel a 7. Lewis-Skelly, I gave a 6. I thought Lewis-Skelly was playing really well before the red card as well, but he only played 45 minutes. So I gave him a 6. I gave Partey a 7. Originally, I gave Partey a 6, which again, was driving home yesterday. I was thinking about it. It's like, he deserves more than the 6 Partey. He played well yesterday. And again, with that extra man sort of missing in midfield because Nwaneri went off, him and Rice had so much sort of ground to cover in that second half. And so I thought, yeah, no, Partey deserved more than a 6. I gave him a 7. Nwaneri, I gave a 6. He did some really nice things in the first half. He wasn't involved. He was always kind of on the fringes of the game yesterday, Nwaneri. He couldn't sort of take command in that Odegaard role. But a few things that he did were very nice. When you look at the 2 chances, I think it was the 2 chances that Havertz had, the header. Nwaneri was heavily involved in terms of the really clever pass he played sort of halfway through the move that led to Rice's header. So just wanted to point out, because he did do some nice stuff yesterday, Nwaneri. But I gave him a 6. Rice, I gave an 8. Rice was my man in the match. I thought he was absolutely colossal at times. Rice, I could have easily given him a 9. He was just the driving force behind everything Arsenal did. He was playing without Odegaard in that because Odegaard was ill and Nwaneri was next to him. And he was basically covering every single blade of grass. He was pushing Arsenal forward. He's been exceptional for a few weeks now, Declan Rice. He's really back to the best form that he showed last season. It's taken a long time to get there this season. He's not been at his best. I'm sure he does admit that himself when you talk to him about it, but he's absolutely right back to his best now. And I thought he was absolutely superb yesterday, Declan Rice. I gave him an 8, but easily could have been a 9, to be honest. Martinelli and Trossard, I gave a 7. I saw some people sort of criticising Martinelli a bit, but I thought certainly from where I was watching in the press box and the angle you get, and you see how much ground he's covering, he was just all over the place down yesterday down that right-hand side. He didn't stop at all. I did give him credit for the cross for Havertz yesterday, my immediate sort of post-match reaction. When Havertz had the header saved in the first half. Having watched that back now, I've noticed it was actually Trossard. It was a brilliant ball from Trossard as well. So I gave Martinelli a bit of extra credit that he probably didn't deserve yesterday for that delivery, but I'm still sticking him with a 7. I put Trossard up to a 7, not just because of that cross, but again, sort of similar to Timber and Partey, just the sheer amount of ground he had to cover as well. I think he deserved a 7. And for Havertz as well, I bumped him because I originally gave him a 5. It wasn't his day in front of goal. Obviously, he had 3 headers, 2 in the first half, 1 in the second. That he could have done better with. He should have at least scored one of those chances yesterday, no doubt about it. But and he was annoying me a little bit yesterday when he kept trying to win free kicks, which is understandable because when you're down to 10 men, you're trying to eat up some time, trying to ease the pressure on your team. But he kept backing into the Wolves player and then just sort of throwing himself to the ground. And it just didn't look like he wasn't doing it well enough to earn himself a free kick. So it was very rarely actually getting a set piece. And in the end, it was just Wolves players were taking the ball off him while he was lying on the floor and going off. So it was annoying me a bit. It was like, just stay on your feet, Kai. But he did just run himself into the ground. It was a tireless performance from the number 9. So I thought 5 in the end was a little bit harsh. So I gave him a 6. So those are my play ratings. Obviously, Calafiori came on, scored the goal. It was great to see him on. I gave him a 7. Tierney, he was only on for a few minutes, so I didn't actually mark him, but it was a nice cameo from Kieran Tierney. Arteta afterwards at full time went straight over to Tierney and gave him a big hug. So he absolutely appreciated what Tierney did when he came on the pitch. So I just wanted to credit Tierney for that, even though he was only on the pitch for the final few minutes. Right, moving on to what you guys have had to say post-match. Mark says, shocker from Oliver again. Can't referee Arsenal games anymore, surely. Tierney stiff to not get a mark out of 10. I think that must be in reaction to what I was saying yesterday in my reaction video. Played the best delivery of the game in his brief cameo. Jebel says, I'm speechless when it comes to Oliver. About the game, Declan Rice is a powerhouse and he is back. He gave the whole team a lift with his tireless and important running when we were down to 10 men. Come on, you Gunners. Dr. Malik says, Michael Oliver is a joke. He couldn't wait to pull out the red card. And how weak was VAR not to intervene and ask him to take a second look? Shambles. Good and crucial win. City next. You then say, regarding the transfer window, if Arsenal don't sign anyone, what message would that send to the players? Oh, we write the season off and focusing on the top four. I get the transfer window is difficult, but City have done the business and the league isn't done. And I might be optimistic, but Liverpool will probably drop points in the next two matches. Got a tough game. Bournemouth next for Liverpool. What a win that was for them. Regarding the transfer window, look, I've said it many times. They absolutely need, the players deserve to have at least one reinforcement brought in between now and the end of the window. They are running on fumes. They're giving absolutely everything. And they deserve someone coming in to help share that burden during the second half of the season. No doubt about that. Guitar says, it was that bad decision. I genuinely think Michael Oliver needs to consider his position and potentially resign. Not only is it a horrendous decision, but set against the backdrop of his record against Arsenal, it raises questions about his impartiality. There are significant statistical anomalies when he officiates our games, and at the very least, he needs to be suspended by the PGMOL while an investigation takes place. What's more concerning, if VAR chose not to intervene, was just because they didn't want to seem to be undermining one of their senior officials. I absolutely think that's the case. It's the only thing I can think of in why they didn't intervene in that situation, is because it was Michael Oliver and they were just too scared to, because there's no way you can be a professional referee looking in, take all the atmosphere out of it, of being in the hustle and bustle of being in the game. But when you're sitting in a studio miles away, you're calm, you're watching on the screens, how can you not overturn that decision? It's so baffling. As bad as Oliver's decision was, the VAR was just as bad. And I think, again, that shows just what a farce the whole PGMOL process is right now. Goss says, Keith Hackett, Goss has sent in Keith Hackett's comments. Keith Hackett's obviously a very famous old referee from this country. And this is what he had to say about the incident. He said, it's Arsenal, and once again, they are at the end of a very poor officiating decision. Michael Oliver, that is not a red card. And if I was you, I would tell Webb that you do not want to work with your VAR, Darren England. Again, between you, it was a disaster to send off that Arsenal player. So yeah, I mean, Darren England 100% deserves criticism for this as well, for not telling Michael Oliver to go and review that, because he absolutely should have done. Is that Lloyd? 1104 says, Rice has been better than last season in recent games. Magnificent. Yep, too right. Aurora Freak says, can you please talk about Havertz? This guy, even though he didn't have his best game in front of goal, was running for the whole game. He was on his own up top most of the time and was just pressuring the defenders. I feel quite bad for him because you can see how tired his legs are, but he was just keep going. Big up Kai. Also a big shout out for Rice. Yeah, look, I've said it about Havertz. It was a tireless performance from him, even if he wasn't going from in front of goal. I don't think Havertz should be anywhere near the Girona game, by the way, in midweek. I don't know what you can do because there's no other striker, but look, Arsenal are through in that competition. Just play Nathan Butler-Adeji if you want to. I think it's a massive risk. Looking at what Havertz was like at the end of that game yesterday, he needs to be nowhere near that game in Spain in midweek, in my opinion. I would say the same for Timber as well. Those two players especially, I think, need a rest this midweek, especially with Manchester City on the horizon. Chile is at 2485, says, since these refs want to be in the media every week, I honestly think post-match press conferences should be introduced for refs. It's time they come out and get grilled by the media about their decisions, not that rubbish ref watch we watch on Sky. Yeah, I dread to think what Howard Webb is going to concoct with Michael Owen for that ref watch next time on this incident. And Sean says, I think Tierney can be used a lot more as a sub. For a team who crosses as much as we do, he has the best delivery after giving himself a yard, maybe second to Saka. Yeah, and that was a nice cameo, as I pointed out, for Kieran Tierney yesterday. Right, I've got to take a breath after all that. I feel like I've been banging on for ages. Where are we up to? Nearly 25 minutes. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the show today, everyone. It was an awful decision, but Arsenal won the game. And we have to celebrate that and feel very good about ourselves this morning, because it was a big win, especially given the circumstances. And now we roll on to another big week that ends, of course, with Manchester City next weekend. So enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. I'll be back tomorrow to do it all over again as we start to prepare for the Champions League and then that Manchester City game. I'll speak to you then. Have a good one. Bye-bye.